Ron DeSantis talks tough when he's talking about what he would do about people in other states, while in his own state the same events are happening. Here he's questioned about the shooting in Maine, while there is a shooting in Tampa.
Let's turn to another key domestic issue, the horrific mass shooting in Maine. And I want to get your reaction to what the newly elected Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson had to say about it this week. He said, quote, "At the end of the day, the problem is the human heart. It's not guns." Do you agree with him?
What does that even mean though? It's the human heart, not guns. I mean, people wouldn't be able to shoot, 19 to 20 people plus if they didn't have a gun, which allows them to shoot, a bunch of people in a short amount of time.
Well, first of all, I think this was a very tragic thing. And, my heart goes out to all the victims in this. Truly horrific. I think in this case, there was a medical intervention, a health intervention. He clearly had problems. He was involuntarily committed. He would not have been somebody that would have been a prohibited possessor, or he would have been a prohibited possessor based on that adjudication. So this is, I think,
Wait, so Ron DeSantis is actually against the Second Amendment since he's against people being able to acquire guns? That's pretty weird because right-wingers are extremely adamant about nothing interfering with their rights to acquire as many guns as possible.
example where clearly this is a guy very well trained, had a lot of skills, and then went off his rocker. There was an intervention, but it wasn't enough. So I'd like to know, why wasn't there more done? We've seen instances throughout the country where there have been a lot of signs where people have maybe been referred, but then they don't go through with everything. And I think that's going to be probably what we end up finding out here. I'm somebody that said publicly, we've had a major push over the last 40, 50 years for deinstitutionalization of people. And I'm not saying you got to go all the way back, but I do think that we tend to pass the buck with some of these people and just kind of hope that they don't do anything wrong when there's a lot of signs. So I would be more aggressive on some of those fringe people who clearly are demonstrating signs that they're a major danger to society.
Let me ask.
So does that mean you would remove a lot of the gun rights from right-wingers because a lot of them are on the fringe of society, like, Nazis and stuff? I mean, is he true about what he's saying, or is he just doing this for some brownie points?
Ask you about your call to institutionalize people, though, because we are learning new details about what did and did not happen. This is overnight. Law enforcement chiefs say they received a statewide alert in mid-September to be on the lookout for Card after he made threats against his base, against his fellow soldiers. They searched for him. They could not find him, yet he was able to, in the days before the attack, walk into a store and buy guns. So if you can't find someone to institutionalize them, as you have called for, why shouldn't there be a final line of defense in the form of a red flag law or some other blaring red sign that says to gun sellers, don't allow this person to have a gun?
No, it's kind of wild that the military wasn't able to find him. They must be pretty inept to not be able to find one of their people. I mean, I know he was just a reservist, but I mean, like, wow, I thought our military was, top of the line.
Well, yeah, I don't think you would even need a red flag. If somebody has a mental involuntary commitment, an adjudication of that nature, that usually would go into the system, and that would be on a traditional background check. I mean, I believe in due process, so I don't believe in this idea, that the government can just take someone's property and then go through due process later. But what I do believe is convicted felons and people that are mentally incompetent or mentally ill, I think that's been the law in pretty much every state and federally for quite some time. And I believe in strong constitutional rights, but with that comes responsibility. And if you're somebody.
So he believes in strong constitutional rights, but he wants to take away guns from certain groups of people. which, you know, anytime anybody talks about, gun laws, right wingers always like Second Amendment, Second Amendment. It doesn't say this, this, or this. So, uh, the Second Amendment doesn't say that felons aren't allowed to have guns. So why are right wingers against the Second Amendment?
That is not, that can't conduct themselves in society because of mental illness, then that absolutely should be taken into account.
But if you can't conduct yourself in terms of mental illness, shouldn't there be a law? In this case, officials in Maine are saying a red flag law could have made a difference. It would have empowered authorities to raise that red light to gun sellers all across the state and say, this is someone who should not be able to own a gun, that final line of defense never.
No, it's funny. Ron DeSantis, the guy that passed a law in Florida allowing people to permitless carry guns, is talking about how he would enact various forms of gun control to prevent mass shootings, when in his own state, he has done the total opposite.
Never kicked in because it didn't exist, Governor.
Well, no, when you do background checks, if somebody has a criminal conviction, for example, that goes into the system. When they run a background check, that is what they're checking against.
Maine doesn't have strong background checks.
No.
Are you arguing for that?
It's no. Every federal, this is federal firearm licenses. When you have to do, everyone has to go through where they scrub this. So the question is what are you putting into the system? If somebody has a mental health involuntary commitment, then that can simply be put into the existing system. You don't need additional things. And here's the problem I have with some of the proposals that have been done, and particularly in some of the more blue states, is that will be weaponized against people that the government doesn't like. I mean, you have a situation where someone can just make an anonymous call into a police station, let's say something bad about someone,
but that
and then they
anonymous
come
call
in
could
and
have helped in
take
this
firearms.
moment. Could it?
Thanks for watching.